Call to order, please. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Director Evans. Director Byers.
Here.
Director Faulkner.
Here.
Director Hudson. Here. Director Mueller.
Here.
Vice President Petroff. Here. And President Kuhn.
Here. My understanding that Dr. Asner will be here
Yes.
shortly. Good. We have public comments tonight. Given this, SSD remains committed to the health and safety of our staff, which is why we continue to wear masks, including in our board meetings. However, masks can make it very difficult to hear. So I would like to remind our presenters and my fellow board members to speak loudly and into the microphone to ensure that our virtual audience can hear. This also ensures the sound is audible on the YouTube recording of this meeting. Thank you. All right, would someone like to make a motion for the approval of the agenda?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. HR Advisory Committee report, please.
Right, we have our HR committee that's going to be presented tonight to you. They're also going to introduce the rest of the advisory committee. So they are in the audience. So we'll start out with Tracy Bradshaw.
Good evening, President Cuneo, Vice President Petroff, Board of Directors, and Dr. Keenan. I'm Tracy Barroso, Interim Director of Employee Relations. It's my pleasure tonight to be joined with my fellow committee members and co-presenters to discuss the recommended changes to the Human Resources Department. The recommendations were developed by an HR advisory committee, and tonight's presenters are Dr. Michael Macklin, Director of Equity, Wendy Owens, Assistant Director of Professional Learning, Shante Wakefield, Director of Special Education for Webster Groves, Dr. Rhonda Wallace, the Principal of North Technical High School, and Kevin Anders, Executive Director of Career Technical Education in College and Career Readiness. Next slide, please. The resignations created by the pandemic have created systemic issues in the workplace. Due to the high rate of unemployment opportunities available to applicants and increasing demand for highly skilled workers, a more employee-focused approach, along with talent acquisition and the development of employee retention strategies, are critical to the district's long-term success. Next slide. HR is now driving the changes necessary to keep up with the most rapidly evolving workplace that we have seen in this modern economy. HR is now viewed as responsible for a company's brand in attracting and retaining talent. Study after study has found that places described as good places to work with employee-friendly policies are more productive and profitable by every measurable metric. Treating employees well creates a social contract that results in employees working harder and being more productive in their jobs. Next slide. Different generations entering the workforce have different expectations when it comes to what the employee experience looks like and what it takes to retain each worker. We want to retain and recruit a cross-generational workforce because each generation brings different talent, expertise, and cultural values to the experience of our current staff and students. Despite the alarming job numbers, SSD as a workplace is seen as a desirable employer who is mission-driven, who are leaders in special education, and our work with and for students is extremely rewarding. Thank you for letting me speak tonight, and the next committee member to present is Ms. Wendy Owens.
Tracy. Continuing to look at, next slide, please. Continuing to look at data specific to special school districts, St. Louis Business Journal lists special school district as the 10th largest employer in the St. Louis region. Additionally, we have 6,151 full and part-time employees, hiring about 500 new employees yearly, and providing about 1,000 leads annually. Next slide, please. So who makes up this committee? It was essential that we include representation from a variety of roles and departments as part of this committee in order to ensure a diverse perspective at the table. So I'll briefly introduce the team members that are here with us tonight. To start, Dr. Elizabeth Keenan, our superintendent, Kevin Ender, Executive Director of Career and Technical Education, Tracy Barroso, Director of Employee Relations, Val Ecker, Student Services Secretary, Jennifer Henry, Executive Director of Communications, Mr. Michael Macklin, Director of Equity, Kenny Mulder, Director of Transportation, myself, Wendy Owens, Assistant Director of Professional Learning, Dr. Rhonda Wallace, North Tech Principal, and Shante Wakefield, Special Education Director in the Westwood School District. So very early on in this work, we established the purpose for this committee as well as the reason for this change. So essentially, as a district, we want to improve staff engagement, recruitment efforts, and retention. The HR Advisory Committee is also charged with reviewing, researching, and proposing recommendations to the superintendent as well as the Board of Education as it relates to the mission, vision, and principles of HR, the organizational structure, as well as a profile for the new leader of human resources. We'll look at that information a little bit later, but as I mentioned earlier when we got started, we took a look at our current vision and mission to make sure that we were grounded in the work of knowing our current state as well as our desired state. So now Kevin Ender will share with you a little more about the stages of this work.
All right, so as a part of this process, we really had three phases as we worked through in the Human Resources Advisory Committee. So the first phase began around the middle of November and ran till the end of the month, and a key component of that was really figuring out what is our current state of human resources in special school districts. That included a heavy emphasis on interviews of staff as well as members of the Human Resources Department. So each member of the HR Advisory Committee interviewed 5 members of SSD staff. And that's from a variety of positions, so teachers, paraprofessionals, secretaries, administrators, to get the diverse perspectives of what is it like to be an employee at SSD, as well as interview 2 members of our Human Resources Department to find out from them, what does a day in the life of your position look like? Where are the common pitfalls? Where do you see opportunities? Where do you want to see us headed? Next slide. Once we got through that initial discovery phase, we moved into the research phase. So this really was mostly the month of December. We were looking at trends in human resources and themes from SSD employee and human resource interviews. So we're looking at it thematically. What are some common trends that we see across all employee groups? What are trends we see across teachers? What do we see across paras? And are there things that we need to address as we think about the structure of human resources? We also brought in some expertise at this point. So McMahon Berger, attorneys from McMahon Berger came in and presented some upcoming trends that they see in human resources and where outside companies are headed. We also looked at organizational structures for organizations with 1,000 employees or more. So how does our structure of human resources compare to other like-sized companies? Where do we have gaps and where do we have areas that we might want to think about pivoting or realigning? And then we reviewed the job descriptions of current positions, as well as looking at what are some potential positions that are out there in those other organizational charts that we reviewed. Next slide. Then the third phase, this is really building the department vision and organizational structure. So that picked up on December 20th and ran through the middle of January. And so at this part, we looked at the structure and we researched behind how to build the mission, the vision, and principles, which Shante Wakefield's going to talk a little bit more about here in a moment. We also looked at the department structure. So looking at the current organizational chart and then what's the future of that organizational chart look like, which Dr. Macklin will talk about a little bit more in a moment. And then we also looked at the job descriptions and what's that job description look like for the chief of this department. So we spent some time working through that. So that was really the third phase of this process. And so now Shante Wakefield's going to talk a little bit more about the mission, vision, and principles.
Thank you, Kevin. And so the mission that we have is defines the department in terms of human resources, our objectives, and its approach to reach those objectives. The drafted mission is focusing on our customer service, our equity, and our total employee experience. And so I want to make note that the mission statement was drafted from the current mission statement that we have as the overall district. And so one of our purposes as a committee and advisory group was to really bring forth that information and identify the specifics of what the expectations are for human resources. So we wanted to make sure that our mission was clear and transparent and that everyone was able to know when they read the mission statement what the actual role of the Human Resources Department was in conjunction with what we're doing overall as a district. Next slide, please. And so our vision, we created that because we wanted to talk about the desired future of the department. We know we have a good department in place now, and so this committee is just designed to bring out the exemplary pieces that we have in our committee, in our department, in order to showcase that into the public and to our stakeholders. So again, our focus is on the employee work experience as well as creating an inclusive culture in the district so that people are feeling as if they belong, they're welcome, and that they can experience success here in the district. Next slide, please. And so for our guiding principles, one of the things that we considered our key areas to focus on was our customer service, change, and innovation, the collaboration that we have within the district, our transparency, which goes back to why we made the adjustment for the mission, and then our recognition, equity, and then our high ethical standards that we have for ourselves and for people that are new employees and future employees of the district. Next slide, please. And so we considered what our leadership persona, what that person would bring to the district, and how those pieces would ultimately make our district much more successful and favorable. And so we developed these leadership personas based on the feedback from the HR interviews that we all conducted. And so we all were able to get different, streams of information coming in from various parts of the district so that we could identify what the leader should look like for HR. And so at this time, Dr. Michael Macklin will speak more into the pieces about our current organizational structure. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wakefield. I would also like to commend my fellow colleagues here, as I've done privately and now doing publicly, for the work that they have done to ensure that the work ethic and that their commitment to ensure that this recommendation tonight to Dr. Keenan and the Board of Education is interwoven with the core values of special school district: equity, commitment, and collaboration. Just a couple of notes that I'm going to make as we talk about the current organizational structure. And these themes and these notes, these themes really came from the interviews that took place that Kevin Ander mentioned during the different phases here. And these themes are no fault to anyone, but just themes of the current structure. And you will hear me use the words HR structure, current structure, versus desired state. Now, desired state is where the recommendations will be and where we want to be. So one of the common themes is that the current HR structure is very siloed. Again, no fault to anyone, but very siloed. So staff members are responsible for specific tasks, which makes completing tasks very, very challenging. One person may need to touch a piece of paper, another person may need to touch a piece of paper. So there may be 5 persons who need to touch that one piece of paper before the task is complete, which makes it very, very challenging. And even more, you can imagine if one of those persons are absent or not present, makes the job even more challenging. There are no staff members that are dedicated strictly to recruitment or retention in the current structure. And when you look there, you can't have specialized support, or you can't have retention or retirement without recruitment. Truly, talent acquisition these days is a must in an HR structure. Also, when we talk about the current structure of the Employee Relations Department, typically the Employee Relations Department processes around 1,000 leads a year. Let me try that again. 1,000 leads a year. Currently, at this point, they have already processed 849 leads this year. We just talk about the raw numbers and the raw data and the systems that's needed in each piece. When we look at the next slide here, a typical HR department, and so this next slide is really going to take a look at what we call the numbers. The eye in the sky never lies. A typical HR department calls for one HR professional for every 150 to 250 employees. Again, to 150 to every 250 employees, of course contingent on industry and locations. SSD's current numbers, of course, for an HR department right now, really looks at anywhere from 24 to 41 staff members. And the current department has 25 positions. Now, I know you're saying, well, Dr. Mackin, that's great, but can you give me some data or some numbers of surrounding school districts? So I'm glad you asked that question. Rockwood currently has 3,600 employees and has 17 staff members. Remember, we want our ratio to be anywhere from 150 to 250 as it relates to HR staff members versus employees.
Pardon me.
Yes, sir.
How many does Rockwood have?
Rockwood has 3,600 employees and 17 staff members, which is around 211 staff members per HR member. Remember, our goal is to be in between 150 and 250 employees per staff. Parkway has 2,450 employees with 13 HR staff members, roughly around 188 staff members per HR member.
The number again, please,
2,450 with 13 HR staff members, roughly 188 staff. Hazelwood School District, 2,500 employees with 9 HR staff members, 277 staff members per HR member. Currently, SSD has 6,151 employees with 25 HR staff members. Currently, as I talked about, 246 staff members per current HR versus HR. The recommended, and we're getting a little sneak peek, but the recommended organizational chart cuts those numbers down to roughly 192 staff members per HR member. So I hear you saying, Dr. Macklin, that's great. You have provided me with numbers of surrounding school districts. But the only problem is those numbers of surrounding school districts are not the same size as SSD. And so I knew you would ask that question, and so because of that, I have a few answers for you. When we look at San Francisco Public Schools, at 6,000 employees, their HR staff members consist of 30. About 200 staff members per HR member. When we look at Manatee Public Schools in Florida, 6,600 employees, about 25 HR staff. And that HR staff does not include benefits, so it seems a little bit large. But you'll see in our organization structure that is going to be proposed, it will include benefits. And then also, St. Paul Public Schools, 6,000 employees, 30 staff members, about 200 staff members per HR. Now, I know you're saying, Dr. Malcolm, you've provided me with a lot of data. Thank you, it's been helpful. But what does that really mean? I'm going to get to that. When you look at recruitment, recruitment really calls for one recruiter for every 15 to 50 positions. One recruiter for every 15 to 50 positions, open positions, of course, contingent on industry, locations, and subject. The proposed model, in the next slide that you'll see there, adds 3 recruitment and retention specialists, but also those recruitment and retention specialists work hand in hand in collaboration with the success manager position. Speaking of success manager positions, in the green, if we delve on those positions and take a little bit of deeper look in that, we'll be able to really see how that correlates to the proposed organizational chart and really make some impacts. I'm just going to highlight just a few recommendations from the proposed organizational chart. And you will see, no pun intended, but the proposed organizational chart is interwoven with equity. The proposed model adds 3 recruitment and retention specialists, as I said before, and really the recruitment and retention specialists ensure success by acquiring talented candidates who will add to the organization, but not only requiring, retaining these employees. These recruitment and retention specialists, there you see in the green on the left, work hand in hand with the success managers. Really, the success manager provides information and support for the employees at all stages of the employee's life cycle. Recruitment, onboarding, orientation, career planning, career development, transition, and even retirement. Also, a couple of notes about the proposed organizational chart. Positions in the gray will be eliminated as those people, of course, vacate positions. But movement is anticipated. And so as people apply for new positions, there will be movement anticipated in this organizational chart. Furthermore, one of the common themes that I would like to note, and Kevin Andrews said it best when he went through the interview process, there were certain themes that were highlighted. And one of the things that were highlighted is when you ask the question, what do you contact HR? One of the number one things that kept permeating over and over and over again is that I contact HR for benefits. In this new proposed organizational structure, you can see that benefits is a strong division of HR. In addition, you also see a data analyst, which is infused. And to sum up the data analyst, I say the data analyst provides the 411 and the 911. That's right, there's 2 types of phone calls you make. And my father would always say to me, Michael, you better make a 411 before you make a 911. And so the data analyst provides the 411 information as it relates to HR, so that we're not in a 911. Also, you do see an assistant director of equity. And so a question that is often asked is equity moving underneath the HR umbrella? No, equity is not. Equity staying put. But what it does is it allows really equity to permeate the organization. And so that position, right, embraces diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? If someone says, well, Dr. Macklin, what are some of the roles of that position? Or what are some of the job descriptions of that position? Of course, recruitment and selection, understanding that we can't have biases in our work because our biases will impact the recruitment and selection of individuals. Of course, learning and development, understanding that we all have schools and we all need to learn to be professionally developed, especially as it relates to equity. Also, have to take a look at compensation. Are there pay inequities with men and women? Are there pay inequities with diverse employees? The 4 positions in the current structure will not be included in the new structure going forward. So there are 2 clerks in gray there that you see at the very bottom of the screen, along with the vacant clerk position that will not be going forward. Most importantly, I want you to remember that this structure allows for strategic relationships within the department and school leadership, as well as personal relationships within the building. The new structure has about 32 positions, which is mid-range of the recommended staffing charts that I went over before. The number one priority of this organizational structure, of course, is to hire the chief that's the remaining positions. Next will be Dr. Wallace, who will consider to talk about the organizational reach.
evening. So how did we get here? We as a committee spent a lot of time researching and talking about what we wanted for our district as well as what we wanted, right? What was best. We wanted a title with a broader title that's going to encompass what our district needs and also what's best for special school district. We needed the title to be conducive with our vision, mission, and also our values. We looked at other titles. We looked at what was trending. But when it came down to it, we had to really have a deep understanding with what was best for our district. Because we have a commitment in our district and what we service each day. While understanding our mission, we were reluctant and did not feel comfortable with moving forward with the 1990s version of what an HR Human Resources Director was. So we dedicated ourselves to developing, with integrity, a title in which we believe not only that represents our district, but what we stand for as a community. And also in tune with what is needed within our district to promote growth and sustainability. So as we continued our conversations, we knew and understood that we have evolved as a district and would want to do that same thing as we continue to evolve with our Human Resources Department. Therefore, with our mission statement, Specialized for Success, also our new knowledge and understanding of information that we researched during this process, our Human Resources Department, we would like to change the name to the Office of Employee Success and Engagement. And we would like to do this because we are specialized for success. Individuals that apply for our district will have a complete understanding of what our district stands for. Fulfilling positions with integrity, ensuring employee success, and also engagement and retention of our employees. For all the aforementioned reasons and understanding that we want the new leader to have a voice in this process, we propose that the current title of Chief Human Resources Officer be changed to Chief People and Culture Officer. An officer for the people that will be responsible for not only incentivizing, but also promoting teamwork, promoting communication, aligning our goals and our standards, and also recognizing our district and the staff in our district, which is everything that we captured in the job description and the job duties that were presented. The chief position will be posted to the National and Local SHRM, National and Local Association of School Personnel Administrators, Glassdoor, Indeed, and also be shared on our platforms, our social media platforms, which includes Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Frontline and MoReach, which are some of our normal channels that we advertise, but also in our Connection newsletter and community newsletter. We have a tentative timeline of, we would like board approval of department changes, January 25th. We would like to post the chief job position with the new title by January 26th. We also would like to finalize remaining job descriptions by February 4th and close the chief job posting by February 16th. This will allow chief interviews at the end of February, moving on to early March. Next slide. What questions do you have for us?
Okay, first.
Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation, that both of you. Apologize for missing some of it. I do have a question about the name, and I was wondering about this as I was reading the material before the meeting. My concern was, will people who work at SSD know what the Office of Employee Success and Engagement is? In other words, in my professional life, I advise sometimes, you should talk to human resources, call HR. Will people know that employee success and engagement is HR?
Yes.
And, I was looking at some of the, job titles. I think the HR clerk was changed to success clerk. I'll be honest with you, I don't know that I would necessarily, what does a success clerk know? I intrinsically know. 1990, but, you know, if somebody says I'm an HR clerk, I go, oh, okay, I'm pretty sure I know what we do. And so I just was curious about this, and do you know what other, large organizations in St. Louis are doing in terms of their?
We do. So if you can go back to the slide previous with the names on it, please. As a committee and committee members, please feel free to come stand with me. As a committee, we decided that we wanted to, number one, to answer your question, yes. Everyone will know the change, the proposed change if it is agreed upon. We will allow everyone to understand why the name is changed and the purpose of the change. So yes, that will be a definite, something that we need to do, a priority for us if this is proposed, and if this goes through the board, that will be a priority for us to let everyone know the name change and the reasons in which we decided on that name change. Again, we did a lot of research. We did research within educational institutions and also business institutions because we really wanted to dig in deep what words meant, what titles meant. However, we did not want to be the school district that's trending because another school district is trending and the name is popular. So when you talk about the Office of Employee and Success Engagement, it encompasses everything that our mission and our vision, as well as our values, state. We want people to come in and apply for our jobs with comfortability. We want them to understand that we are here for DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and success of all employees. We want them to understand that engagement is one of our top employees, and the success in our district is important to us because we want to retain them, right? So sustainability is very important as well. When we talked about the other positions within the that Dr. Macklin presented, success manager, the name success speaks loudly and speaks volumes because anytime you want someone to apply for your district, you want them to, number one, understand what their HR department is about, which is why we're proposing a change. We need to help our people to understand that when you apply for special school district, you are applying for a school district, a career that has longevity, sustainability, one who cares, and one who's going to help promote yourself in growth and development. So we took all of those things into account. We also wanted to have everybody that applied for the district understanding that we want them to be successful throughout our district and not just be here for 2 years and then move on. Right, that was important. The success managers came in when we talked about the potential new title for the department, the potential new title for the chief. Because as we talked about Chief People and Culture Officer, what does he really do? What does he or she really do, right? And that particular person, as I stated before, that person is going to incentivize. That person is going to grow and develop new people coming in. That person is going to ensure that they're welcome and that we're providing them with everything that's needed for them to be successful and to stay with our district, longevity and sustainability. Would you like to add anything?
Just one other thing as well. So when we talked about this as well, we talked about how this all fits into a larger rebrand of what is human resources. And so there's really two legs to that. So one side of it is already existing employees. So people who already work here, educating them on really what does this new structure mean for you? Who do you go to? We already communicate on a regular basis with our HR contact card of this is who you go for what for typical issues. And instead, this is really going to be talking about a much more customer service oriented approach to that. So as opposed to, I'm trying to navigate the contact card and figure out which HR clerk I call about XYZ problem, my success manager is my go-to person. Whether I'm a new employee coming in and navigating the process or an existing employee, based off where I work in the district, I've got a seamless point of contact for that. Then you also have external people who are looking to come into the district. And so we had some conversation about that too, because are people going to be able to find their way around to where they need to? But really, external folks start with going to our website and clicking on the careers button or employment and then going from there. So that piece of it's all right. So then now we've got to think about the onboarding process. So as we bring new employees in, where we've done the rebrand rollout with existing, new employees, we're educating them about that through the onboarding process of, here are typical things that you would think of as an HR function. This is your success manager. This person's your really main point of contact, and everything's going to funnel through there unless it's benefits or it's something that falls in that employee labor relations bucket. So really trying to streamline that communication and that success manager being that key point of contact. So a rebrand and a rollout of that rebrand is really important, and so that's why Jennifer Henry is a part of the HR Advisory Committee, because that communication piece to staff, so they know where to go. Because oftentimes employees can be here for years before they need to contact human resources with an issue. And so how do we keep that front of mind so when your issue arises, you know where to go?
And in addition to what Mr. Anders just stated, it's also good with building relationships. So the person that's calling the success manager is building that relationship, and so we're keeping that employee, right? We're keeping that employee because that employee feels welcome and comfortable, and that employee is going to go out and tell her girlfriends and guy friends that this was her experience with our school district, and that's how we're going to get good people, people who stay in our district because they feel welcome.
I mean, I guess I get all that, and I imagine we could accomplish all that without the name changes, because the idea, the hypothesis here, that the name change and the rebrand is going to promote a different culture or a different way of doing it.
Yes.
And I guess not to belabor the point, I still am a little bit worried that people won't know who the HR people are. You know, I mean, I can almost imagine the situation where we say, I'm trying to make sure I get this.
And we talked about being very intentional
Yeah.
about,
Culture
about the
officer.
It's like, you know, parentheses.
It's
human
trending,
resources,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
In other words, because this may be a more unique thing to myself, I don't know. I worry, like the Office of Employee Success and Engagement, you know. Is that what we're gonna kind of tell people, or will it be something where everybody's just gonna get it and they're gonna know?
And that's where the rebrand rollout and the onboarding process are going to become really important. The difference is right now in our model, you don't have a single point of contact, and so by switching to that single point of contact, that person in HR who's that success manager is going to be more visible with those employee groups, and so they're going to be better aware of that person, as opposed to right now where you're pretty much calling up a stranger who you haven't met, haven't interacted with, because, well, I have this one very specific problem that goes to this one very specific person. Now I have a different very specific problem that goes to a different very specific person. And so by funneling it through the success manager, that person should be visible with that group of employees, and so they should be able to know that person as that point of reference.
Yeah, to be very clear, I think the reorganization itself is excellent. Okay, thank you for humoring me.
And it's also similar to, like, if you think about in the IT world where you have IT, but we call our department technology services. It's one of those things that you just have to find, well, what do you call that? And so that's something that in the onboarding process, we can really educate people to that piece of SSD.
Questions?
I thought when we first learned about this, I thought all of these names were like, but then I asked my HR friends, and they're like, oh no, this is, jump on board, this is what we're doing all across the country. So they, some of them had the exact same success, and yeah.
So people will know what that means.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Gotcha.
these were people who worked in big companies.
Yeah.
So the verbiage is out there.
Yeah.
The names are out there. People have somewhat of an understanding. But as it's being talked about more and the positions are being created in large companies and institutions, the name is out there, so they have a familiarity with the name.
My question I have is, are we going to be presented with a new budget that is going to take for us to be able to implement this?
So when we talk about the committee levels, this really is being done in phases. And so the first phase of this is looking within the existing positions that we have and what's that alignment look like, and then thinking about what are those new positions that don't currently exist. So right now, the main area we were focusing was on that chief position, because that's an existing position that already exists in the current budget. And so what's the job responsibility and title look like for that position? Then from there, we're drilling down deeper into that next layer. Dr. Keenan, do you want to talk a little bit about what that rollout looks like?
Yeah, so when we looked at the slide with the green on there, so there are going to be positions that are currently within the structure that will go away, as we mentioned, but nobody's going to be laid off. And then currently what we're looking at is for additional positions going forward in this budget, and then we'll assess where the three the recruiting positions. We want to get the success managers in there first, And then we're looking at bringing in the recruitment specialist after that. So those would be the 3 additional positions in phase two. So it's going to be a net of 4 additional positions right now going forward.
Answer questions. First of all, you're not the only one who's in the 1990s. I'm way beyond that. Hey, 1990s are kids, you know. But I do have some questions. One of which is I would feel more comfortable also if you had somebody from finances that were dealing with this. And I say that because when you start looking at HR and you start looking at contracts and you start looking at negotiations, which is underneath there, I did not see that as any of the goals. I did not see that as any of the guiding principles. I did not see it in anything. I think that's a pretty large piece that we need to include if we're going to do this. Second of all, and let other people talk about the names, and that's fine. I would like though, is there a reason why we are hiring the chief people and culture officer, I think I have it correct. After reorganize, why would we not put somebody in first and then have them help with the reorganization and have whatever ideas they also have?
I'll tell you that, because we know the reason we had this advisory group was I didn't want to bring in outside consultants to tell us what we needed to know about ourselves. And we want to make sure that we're matching up what we want with bringing in somebody. So it's going to be key by us identifying this, when we bring in this new chief officer, that they're going to have the qualities that we're looking for.
Okay, I can see where that's important in hiring the officer, but I would want them to have some role in the reorganization too.
We feel that with the representation of where we're currently at, we think it's important to recognize that we have existing people. When this new person comes in, we'll be able to look at any other things that we need to look at as they get used to it. It takes a good year for anybody to come into a new position to figure out. There might be recommendations going forward in the phase 2 part of it, but I think that the committee, that we have a nice representation of people who have been here a long time, people who have been a part of HR, people who have been a part of SSD for a short period of time, so that we at least are giving some foundation going forward, and then the chief will be able to have that opportunity to make some adjustments as we go into phase 2.
I don't want to rush into this, and I think this is an excellent idea for the organization. I would love to sit down and have a work study on this. And my reasoning is HR has been our most challenging department since you've come here.
I think it was well before
No,
that.
I'm not saying that.
Before you came here,
That was the first thing you guys talked to me about. First thing you guys talked about.
First thing we talked to you about,
Mm-hmm.
and since that time, this would be our 4th HR head if we hire someone new.
The fourth person.
Yeah, 4th person. That's why I'd want to make sure at least we got it right this time. I'd want to make sure that we've thought this through. And I'd like to make sure everybody on the board is aligned with this. This is a striking change. I'm not saying it's bad. I think the ideas are good. But I'd want to make sure that I had everyone on the board having all their questions with a work study before I vote on this. And I know that may delay it a week or two, but if you switch 4 times, that's not a bad idea.
Right, but the other thing is, right now is your hiring season. If you don't hire some of these people right now and just within the spring of the year, you're gonna miss out on candidates, because
You
Right.
missed out 4 other times, 3 other times.
But we also have a plan in place. Before, you just posted the position, and we just kept going through it. I think that in terms of, we regardless can post the position because it's open anyway. We can do that for next year, but the thing about it is, we need to make sure that, this team here was very thoughtful. And we've been spending, I know that the board has just been introduced to pieces of this, but the day-to-day work in terms of not only what this team investigated, but what they talked about in interviewing with staff members and also talking with HR people, they were all involved with this too, the HR department. So we want to make sure that we look at this in a very, it's not too much of a departure in terms of, we have people in the department that are going to still have roles, but they're all going to be doing similar roles. But it's going to be also making sure that we support that training and get that going now, so that by July 1st, we're able to start moving that. The change wouldn't happen until July 1st, the organization.
Gotcha.
So we wouldn't change over until July 1st with all of that. But I think in terms of getting positions and moving them forward, February and March are your real key times to get people in and do, especially the chief position, and also starting to be able to look at the success manager position.
I can see having the chief come in there, the complete reorganization. I'd like to see how the pieces fit. And I'd like to have a work study where everybody can ask questions in an open meeting that would be more than a 10 to 15 minute structure.
Other questions that you have right now?
Like, think about what we've done and think about what we did before. At least we've got some numbers. That we're going down from, the way I looked at it, we're going down from 1 out of 246 to 1 out of 92, which puts us in line with Parkway and better than Rockwood. I'd like to see also, since we are one of the top 10 employees, I'd like to see, even though they're not school systems, I'd like to see what are their numbers there. Because the numbers that we have, we go beyond the school system. And I know that you compared us to San Francisco. Times in my life I've ever been compare anything to San Francisco. But to St. Paul, and that's much more Midwest. I would just, anyone listening has nothing against San Francisco.
Mr. Faulkner might.
Yeah. But
Can I just make this suggestion? So we can still continue to have discussions in terms of, going forward. We can bring it back to the work study in February, because we have a work study in February. We can keep bringing this conversation going through the organizational structure pieces of it.
and as we do that, could we also have a financial piece that's put into it? I really think we need some financial input into this, not only because you have positions and see how that goes, but if you're going to be talking about negotiations, if you're going to be talking about unions and the negotiations, which I think was a piece in this, it would be a good idea to have finances integrated.
Can you explain a little bit more what finances mean?
I'd like to have the budget into it. I'd like to, when we looked at the, what are the goals, what are the values, there was nothing about that.
Oh, the overall
Right.
proposal of the positions.
Right.
We were adding those into the budget going forward for the
No.
preliminary budget.
I'm talking about when we talked about the goals, the values, what we're planning to do. There was nothing in there about that. There was nothing about that.
So you're thinking about like adding in principles about fiscal accountability and efficiency and those pieces.
And I think that needs to be integrated in with the people that do finances for us.
One of the things that when we were talking with the different groups of the persona, the negotiations and thoughtful pieces around that, that was emphasized when we put that in there too.
So one other piece, kind of to that point about the reorganization and why you're looking at it now as opposed to when you have a chief in place, one of the other pieces that we kind of talked about way early on in this process is that a reorganization, it's uncomfortable. And so to have a person come in the door and the first thing that we do is we give them a broken system and ask them to reshuffle that around. When they don't know the personnel, they don't know the culture, and they're trying to make sense of all those parts and components, that's going to make relationship building on the way in the door really hard for that new chief. Whereas if you've got a structure already in place and you're filling positions, that's a much easier position to come into, where it's the what do I want my team to look like, as opposed to I've got to reshuffle all of this, and that's all going to fall back on that individual.
Yeah, I would see this, we give him a model. We give him
Or
Him
her.
or her.
him or her, and a model. And I would figure he or she at that point, once they get into it, after a year, will probably change some of these pieces.
You can make recommendations.
I think that's real important. I just want to make sure that we're not hiring an individual, whether it's the chief of HR or whether it's the chief people and culture officer every year. Because we need the stability here. I mean, that's one of the things extremely important in any department. That's why I want to make sure that I agree with all the changes. I think everything that's been presented is good. I just want to make sure we do it right.
I'm sorry, I do have one question. It isn't so much about the structure, but I know we're finalizing, or you want to finalize the job descriptions by February 4th. I have a question about the recruitment specialist and, in particular, are there any specific equity goals that tie to those roles in terms of like diversity hires or anything like that? Are there going to be anything specific?
Yes, there'll be, and that's what the HR analyst and the assistant director of equity, that will be also being able to, there's gonna be a lot of, data tied to it, so we can track, information and. Yeah, and also making sure once we hire people and we're hiring diverse populations, are they staying? Are we supporting them within the employment process too? Tracking the pieces of it. So there'll be quite a few different pieces.
So tracking it, but, I mean, is it going to be tied to specifically like,
Yeah.
recruiting specifically for that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Dr. Byers, Scott, do you have anything that you'd like to add? I have none. Okay, thank you. Dr. Byers?
No, I'm good, thank you.
To make sure everybody was heard.
Am I asking in reference to a budget being presented, because I'm assuming that even though we are hiring an individual as it's put out now, I'm assuming that the language that is being used in the job description that you're going to be putting out may be different than what many individuals who have previous experiences in HR have. So in vetting that individual in that interview, and even if you get someone who's had some exposure to this type of new system, how much is it going to cost us in reference to being able to provide training, to get people up to the speed that you guys have gotten to? You've had time to think of this. Now we're bringing in people who this is something that's totally different to them. And their experiences are in the 1990 or less version. So now we've got to, even if they're the right people, good people, likable people, they've now got to be horned into our organization. And we're taking a different step. I think it's a good, progressive step. Like I say, I just think that if we're talking about a work session too, I'd just like to be able to know what type of cost that we're going to find ourselves in implementing this, because that's got to be a consideration as well. Not to say that I don't think that very many board members would probably be objecting unless it actually got to be astronomical. But to that point, I think that just gives us a little bit more of an understanding as to how much this evolution actually is going to play in reference to, the overall goals financially we still find ourselves faced with. And in closing, one of the things that today, and I spent a lot of time trying to come up to 2025, not 22, 25, that, we're going to be looking at difficulties in the educational obtainment of people because of what we're going through. And so 5-6 years from now, we're probably, as a country, going to begin to feel the effects of what we've not been able to do educationally through this period of time. And some of those same people are going to be out in the workplace, and that's across the board. That's going to not only be kids K through 12, but we also have had a gap in individuals who are in universities. So again, I think that that means that we're gonna have to have patience and some time to be able to get people psychologically and expertise to the point of what now our particular goals and objectives call for.
I just want to make a comment. So I work for an academic nonprofit that works with teachers and school districts across the country, and our setup is like this. The organization, the HR is set up by, the person I speak to is a client success manager, something like that. But it's basically, the structure is pretty much the same. And it is, from my personal experience, helpful to have one person, because the organization is large. And I don't, I didn't know what I was doing when they tried to onboard me, but the way it's set up is very similar to what they're proposing. It's just a point of contact, and then that person is responsible for kind of figuring out who you need and that kind of thing. I think we need probably more about us catching up to everyone else necessarily.
We'll get you guys there.
And then too, those are the types of people that we would attract, Dr. Camille, those individuals that are already in the know about the new. Mr. Faulkner, those are the ones that we would like to attract, that already know the new things in SHRM, the individuals who are already up to date on what's new in human resources, and the ones that already know the newness, of the department and of the style and how it's run and the evolution, of human resources as a whole.
But we're only, let's see, we're going to be 4 new positions, then 3 more. Possibly we may want to do all 7 at one time, I'm still thinking. But we still are filling positions, we're still transferring individuals to other roles. They're gonna have to be brought up to date.
Yep.
Because this is kind of like a Baldrige model. Everybody has given enough authority to do it themselves. So these people are all gonna have to be generalists. To a certain
Absolutely.
extent.
Yep. And we've got a plan for that, working with the HR department. And the people who are in the department will also have, because they're all experts in their particular area, and we're combining all those particular areas to one, everybody's doing the same pieces of it, then that way, the good thing is we're gonna bring them along, and they'll be able to help craft and really work through it. But, yeah, we've already talked about how once we start moving in this direction, mapping everything out, and then being able to train and work with the staff, be over the spring of the year, so that in July 1st, which is a good timeline, like this is gonna be starting July 1st, moving over, and then that's when their new positions will transition.
So, did they know before this meeting, this was?
Absolutely. You never tell anybody. You'll not find out in a board meeting. So, we talked to everybody. We talked to HR. We presented it to them, got their feedback. We met with them 3 or 4 times with the entire department, benefits too. So everybody has been fully involved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your work. All right, next is extended school year and summer program. Wendy?
Sure. Good evening, Dr. Cuneo, Vice President Hoffroth, Superintendent Keenan, and Board of Directors on Wendy Pendergrass. It's that time of year where we're going to start talking about extended school year and the planning process of summer programs. Next slide. Next slide. So based on the multiple opportunities that we had, the feedback that we received from our surveys, the feedback that we have received from families, the feedback that we received from staff, with extended school year, we made some changes. Some things that we did with collaboration with our unions is bargained a different salary approach. So our teacher assistants and teacher aides will now be making $20, and so on. We will also be providing, for extended school year, breakfast and lunch in our SSD schools. That is something that we offered last year and will continue to offer this year. With partner districts, what we're going to do is there in the, later on in the presentation, you'll actually see that not all of our districts have had very structured plans of what's happening in summer. There's been some other things that have been the focus of some school districts' attentions lately, that summer planning is underway. So you will see planning. But we will be working collaboratively with our partner districts when it comes to summer programming. Next slide. So for an extended school year, what I did was, graph out for all of the partner districts, the school districts, the students that qualified for extended school year, the students that actually attended, and then who is eligible right now. What I want to caution you at is we just recently came off of a large break, and we do have a large portion of students that may qualify for extended school year based on that winter break. That's a data collection point that we often use. Another data point would also be spring break. So the numbers may seem a little low or a little different than they were last year, but that could be a reason. So there's the first part of the alphabet and the second part of the alphabet. And then I also placed the number for the schools and programs. So let's go to the next slide and we'll start talking about ESY at a late, I'm sorry.
That was my phone. I apologize.
ESY at a glance. So we, Mary Ann Cooper, I work collaboratively with Mary Ann Cooper, Chiquita McGriddle, Dr. Tammy Yates, and Dr. Kelly Grigsby to work on what, of course, extended school year looks like. That is something that special school district will always run because of the IDEA and students qualifying for extended school year. So I would say we're really comfortable at planning out what extended school year looks like and is able to come up with the graph. As we move forward for summer programming and flush more ideas out, I hope that we have a graph also for summer programming and timeline. So we are just now right at the beginning of this graph with looking at December and January, of course, collecting, getting the application out, and really trying to see how many people are interested in working extended school year, how many students are now qualifying. Directors, coordinators, and principals are in the process of gathering their charts, because we start having conversations with all of our staff of who's interested in who is not. Next slide.
Can you go back to that one? I'm just curious. Why do you have in bold, do not send ESY hire letters?
What do you think? That's a great question, Dr. Cuneo. So we want to do something that makes sense this year and have the board approve the letters first prior to sending them out.
All right.
Don't you like that?
I love it.
You talked, we did.
Okay, fantastic.
Yes, we did. So, yes, that is that, and you notice that that is really serious. We've done it both, right? So the summer program dates, again, that planning simply means that districts are in the process of planning what their summer programs are going to look like. Typically, in most of our districts where our students attend for extended school year, they also offer some type of support for summer programming. I have heard and will be very transparent with the board that districts have also started asking their staff. There's a lot of staff that are just simply not interested in working this summer, so that may impact some of the summer programming that happens in our partner districts. We, however, will have extended school year, but that may impact as we move through if they cannot find staff to support summer programming, some of the districts that may impact what they have to offer. Okay, so there is our first part of the alphabet, and then the second part of our alphabet. And then, so what is happening in our partner schools when we look at that? Based on the recommendation that we have a director in all of our partner districts, we have coordinators now sitting at the table. They are now involved in conversations from the very beginning, or should be involved in conversations from the very beginning when the group of administrators are sitting down and programming for summer, all different kinds of summer programs. So they're collaborating with the partner districts. We're also gathering how much interest is out there. What we want to do for our families is make communication smooth, so we don't want to have competing programs like USF. There was some confusions, if you remember. Our families were unsure of what programs they were going to. By planning with our partner districts, this will allow us for clear communication. So you are going to be offered extended school year. Special school districts is providing that for you. We will communicate, but also here's the opportunities for your child to also participate in the summer programs that are happening in the partner district. We are asking families to obligate extended school year, of course, have their students attend and receive our services for ESY, and then, of course, participate after the summer program. Next slide. For our schools, we were looking at doing multiple different things. Our feedback from our SSD schools and programs is they're wanting to do more like a camp-like or fun experience-like with learning. Dr. Grigsby met with Summer Journey. It goes by several names, as you see in the contract that also went to you tonight. What Summer Journey does is it provides staffing and programs for schools to implement during summer programming. They are going to provide for us, because we're a special school district and we know how to support our students, the materials. So it's project-based activities and materials that are both hands-on, increase critical thinking, get some creativity such as acting it out or drama programs that our students would be participating in the afternoon. So 8 to 12 would be our extended school year, and then 12 to 2:30 would be our staff implementing the materials and opportunities that Summer Journey will provide us, of course, if the board approves the contract. Fine. So next steps, of course, we're always going to, I'm a worrier, so I'm always going to worry to make sure we have enough staff to support our students effectively, so making sure that we have support teams, nurses, all of the different supports that our students need to have a summer experience. Of course, continue to seek the voice of students. What we really wanted to do is make sure that we had activities that they were asking for, especially for that with what we control, which is the summer programs in our schools. So I'm really excited about seeing how the different activities support them. We need to finalize the process of how we're going to get out the information to our families so it is clear and communicated effectively. What we would really like to do moving forward with Dr. Grigsby, Dr. Yates, and Shakita McRiddle is to create a leadership program in typical public schools. What they have is a teacher or a teacher leadership program where someone that is an aspiring administrator wants to run a program or see what it's like to be an administrator. So we would like to kind of provide that opportunity. The summer project would be, of course, them coming in and helping support summer programming throughout the district. So that's something that is going to take a little bit more time to plan out. And then, of course, we will continue to collaborate with our transportation, finance, our new office of cultural, not human resource, that'll have to change. We'll continue to collaborate with that position as well. Any questions?
I have one. You said breakfast and lunch will both be given. Will they both be given during the ESY time? Obviously breakfast. Will lunch be given before they leave ESY, even if they're not going to be there for summer journey?
Yes, we are working on programming to where we can possibly have breakfast that is provided as soon as they walk in the door, and then possibly also do lunch before they leave.
Perfect.
Yes, if they don't stay. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
I really like that, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question. For summer journey, is that for all abilities, these different activities that, different offerings, will it be for all abilities?
Yes. So what we, Dr. Grigsby has asked that they have modified, but nobody can modify stuff like special school districts. So they are aware that we're going to be taking some of these materials and help modify, and then we'll share in the experiences that we use. Because we have a variety of students that will be participating, we want to make sure all students can participate in these activities. Absolutely.
Last summer, we offered afternoon programming at the other ESY locations in our other district schools, and I'm curious if we're going to be doing anything like that this year.
We are.
We're looking at.
May you ask that one more time?
Yeah, so last summer, we offered afternoon programs, not just at the SSD schools, but at our partner district campuses as well. I'm curious if we're going to do something.
So it is our hopes that by our directors, our partner district special education directors and special ed coordinators partnering with the schools, that our students would have a seamless experience. They would attend ESY, and then they would be able to sign up and attend any type of summer programming that is offered in the afternoon. We didn't want to compete against any of their programs. what we want to do is provide our staff to support those students that are going to need support in the afternoons and those summer programs.
I'll add that, just a compliment, I appreciate that you're seeking student voice in the shaping of the programs, and the fact that the summer journey lineup, that looks awesome.
Looks fun, doesn't it? Yeah. Yeah. I want to
I have another question. So for the ESY students, will they be with the same support staff during summer journey, or will it be different?
Oh, yeah, but they have the same turnout.
Yeah.
So these are all great questions. So we are in the process right now. We've got about 952 applicants that have placed an application or interest in working either extended school year or summer programs. It's really going to be based on hopefully what staff we have available and what those students support will.
Ideally, they would, right?
Ideally.
Okay.
Ideally, you want to team them up for success right from the
Right,
get-go.
from 8 to 6.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.
Okay, and our next, Juneteenth observance and calendar update.
Good evening, thank you, Dr. Coneo, Vice President Potroff, Dr. Keenan. I am Board of Directors, I am Wendy Pendergrass, and I'm going to quickly tell you and ask again to approve our calendars. What I wanted to do is quickly go over with Juneteenth being observed as a federal holiday last year, and the opportunity of us, a lot of districts this year took what was considered a fall break. We wanted, since we were going to add Juneteenth to our calendar to be observed, we also wanted to also add get your approval on the calendars for the fall break. So if you look, we have 21, 22, 22, 23, and 23, 24, where Juneteenth was added to this year's calendar, but also moving forward, we added the fall break. Juneteenth will be observed either on that day that it happens or the Monday immediately following. If you don't know this, there's some years coming with leap year, so back to back, we will actually be celebrating Juneteenth on June 19th, 23, and June 19th, 24. So there's some commonalities in that as we're moving forward, but that's what we have added to the calendar, and we're hoping you would approve it for the break.
I have one question. So the fall break will be just the Friday, or will it be Friday and the following Monday?
So it'll be just, typically what happens is we have a off day that happens sometime either in October,
Right.
where we backed the calendar up and gave a professional development day and then an off day. So that would be we would give them a fall break where we would have professional development, no staff, no students on the Friday, and then they would return on Monday to start school.
My brain shut off. So students, sorry, I'm going to ask it again because I totally missed your answer. Students get both the Friday and Monday off, or students only get the Friday off?
Students would get Thursday and Friday off, depending on what day that would fall.
Thank you.
Yes.
Now my brain got it.
Yes, depending on how it would fall in our calendar, and they would be back to school on Monday.
Perfect.
Sorry, look to the person to your left about having those extended days. No, I'm just kidding. No, we want to get our kids back in school, so yes.
Okay, just want to make sure.
I'd like to say that it's, I don't know how to explain the emotion, as being one who in turn worked so hard, not only in getting the national holiday, but most people don't know that the state of Missouri passed HB 640 in 2003 that made June 19th an official state holiday, but yet we couldn't get any support locally. It took our finally getting national involved to be able to get recognition for that time frame. And hopefully when we get to that point, we'll talk again about what Juneteenth truly means, because that's now where we're having to deal with in reference to the understandings that go beyond what became the short narrative from the 1980s. So thank you very much. I appreciate that, and I'm looking forward for our being able to stay observant, then hopefully put together what that observation truly means to embed spirits that are involved in Juneteenth, hopefully into not only our staff, but also into our children.
Yes, after that, once it is approved, we would be, of course, then looking at bargaining, what exactly that looks like, how we celebrate it, but we have to bargain those, observance days into the contracts. That would be a next step. So by the board approving it, we would make sure that those days are also added with our different, workers as well.
And we'll treat this much like we do with, other, holidays like MLK, Martin Luther King Day. We send out, and we talk about what it is, so absolutely, it's important for, we don't discuss every holiday, but there are certain holidays that we need to discuss, and those are very much, that we build into the discussion.
Any other questions? All right, now to the consensual items. I believe, 6.03, the HR Advisory Committee recommendation.
It's on the.
It's been excluded, good. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the consensual items?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Action items. All right. Okay, that's the HR Advisory Committee recommendation. Question? Discussion? I would recommend that we hold off this until we have a work study. That's my recommendation.
That also means placing the job, the one ad for the chief. You also want to wait on that.
We can start looking for a chief. I see all that, but I want to go before I talk about an overall structure. I think we all need to sit down.
So could I make a motion to approve part of this item, the job description for the chief
Yes,
position?
you can.
Apart from the others, so we can start that.
Would someone like to second that?
Amend the motion to, that we're voting on the placement of the ad for the chief only at this point.
Yeah, I'm moving to approve only the job description for the chief.
Is there a second for that?
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. I believe the last weekend. We're not dising, we're just stating we're going to hold off.
And we're
All right.
not holding back the,
No, not at all.
the really things that need to happen right away.
Would someone like to make a motion for a closed meeting of the Board of Education on July 25th and February 11th, 2022, at 7 p.m. at the, January 25th, or February 11th, 2022, at 7 o'clock, or at the end of the meeting.
Second.
We need a roll call on this one.
Director Asner?
Yes.
Director Byers?
Yes.
Director Faulkner?
Yes.
Director Hudson? Yes. Director Mueller?
Yes.
Vice President Petrov? Yes. And President Cuneo?
Yes. I'd like to make a motion to approve the board regulations.
So
Wait,
moved.
that's just board minutes, please.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Board regulations. Informational. School update mitigation plan. The only question I have is, we have not been officially sued yet, at least we haven't received notice, is what I heard.
No, the only notification we received through the news, so we have not been officially.
Sued by the AG office.
45 hours.
We did this day by day, because we cross every day. Go to executive meeting actions. The following items were approved during the executive meeting on December 14th. Employment, resignations, retirement, salary adjustments, extra duty pay, 3 contract release requests, termination of staff, and 2 settlements. Calendar events, let everybody read through those. Would someone, any board communications someone would like to bring up? Staff, would someone like to make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Take 3 minutes, then go back to executive session. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.